So I'll keep the traits of a mature person brief so we don't drag this out. First up is responsibility. Responsibility isn't just some tiring, unpleasant concept. Of course, you don't always feel like being responsible. Responsibility, at its core, is your capacity to respond to life's challenges. That very ability to respond is the essence of responsibility. Simply put, it's keeping your word. Next, a mature person is usually proactive. They don't hide. They don't just wait around. They move forward. Another hallmark of maturity is self-reliance and a sense of inner self-sufficiency. Self-reliance means, as I've already said, the confidence that I can handle this, I can do this. A lack of self-reliance sounds like, I can't handle this, why did you leave me alone with it? Let everything burn, now I'm going to stay angry at you for the rest of my life. You left me, you betrayed us, just disappear forever. A mature person thinks differently. A mature person acknowledges, it's hard, it's unpleasant, but I can handle it on my own. I'll get through it in the end. I'm not going to nurse anger toward this person, because they're the one who's immature. They walked away from us, went looking for something easier. It didn't work out, and they left. Or say, it doesn't matter whether they walked out on a joint project or something else. They truly walked away, took no responsibility, and so on. But we don't waste energy on anger. We focus on living our own lives, because that's what we need to do. Also, a mature person values depth. So please, if you tend to say things like, too much text, not reading, or this book is too long, just give me a summary, you're sliding into immaturity. That's not okay. Build the habit of getting to the heart of things. Please, this is crucial. The depth of your relationships and the depth of your interests either speak to your maturity or reveal a lack of it. The more deeply you can engage with something, the more mature you are. If you only skim the surface of everything, that's a sign of immaturity. And in an immature state, as I've said and will repeat. Next, let's look at the last two qualities, starting with long-term planning. A mature person tends to think years ahead. A child can't do that. An immature person can't either. They need to live only in the present moment. You might object. Wait, don't all the great spiritual teachers tell us to live in the present? Absolutely. That's a skill of focusing attention. But let's be a bit more observant. You travel by plane, or did before the pandemic. And those planes weren't created by people living one day at a time. You seek help at medical centers that weren't built by people thinking only about today. You attend universities, travel on paved highways, work in office complexes, or study in schools. None of that was made by people chasing short-term whims. All of it took a long time to build. Many of you use the subway every day, a system that was planned and constructed over decades with the long term in mind. That is a capacity of mature people. Immature types aren't interested in that. It seems absurd to them. They want pleasure right now. Another hallmark of a mature person is self-control. If you regularly get swept away by intense emotions, excessive anger, or depressive episodes, and say, I'm beside myself, you can conclude you're in an immature stance. And that means you can study 500 books, attend 500 motivational seminars, memorize every famous psychologist's teachings, complete every manifestation challenge out there, and nothing will fundamentally change in your life. Any gains will be wiped out after a while. For some, the effect will last a year, for others 3. But no one will make a genuine breakthrough while staying in an immature stance. That's why it's critically important to transform it. So we've covered 2 aspects. Let's move on to the third aspect. The third aspect that hinders our real development is not knowing ourselves well enough. Right now, you might be thinking, here we go again with the cliches. I definitely know myself. I've lived with myself my whole life. We really don't like being told we don't know ourselves. It irritates us. We want to snap back at the person who offended us. It's extremely unpleasant to hear, but we still have. True self-knowledge is accessible to very few. And there's one basic mistake almost everyone makes. We tend to believe we can get to know ourselves only through other people's perceptions and words. It seems that if we've heard something about ourselves, that's what defines us. As kids, we really don't understand ourselves well, which is perfectly understandable. Our conceptual framework isn't developed yet. On top of that, our brain isn't fully formed. The brain, especially the frontal cortex, doesn't finish developing until about age 32. So if you're, say, 25, and you're sure you've got yourself completely figured out, well, congratulations. You simply can't be aware of some aspects yet. It's not about a lack of intelligence. Your brain is still developing. That creates some challenges, but it doesn't mean it's hopeless. It means you should keep living a calm, joyful, and happy life, avoiding snap conclusions and the conviction that you fully figured yourself out. Self-knowledge will unfold through all of life's turning points. The crises at 30, 45, and 60. There are many such pivotal periods, and in each one you'll discover yourself anew. That's why it's crucial to develop the skill of self-study, self-observation. Get to know yourself by analyzing your own thoughts and feelings in different life situations. Here's a practical tip for getting to know yourself better. Experiment. Try different activities and experiences. Explore yourself in different relationships, in different kinds of activities. Go where you feel drawn. Not that you have to try absolutely everything, but it's important to experiment, study, and observe yourself. What's happening? What kind of person am I? Now I'm starting to get irritated. Good. And over time you might realize, I'm an emotional person. I'm easily excitable. I'm prone to emotion. Is that a flaw? No, it isn't. Do you need to acknowledge it? Absolutely. And then work with it. There's simply no other way. That's why so often, let me say it again, we slap labels on ourselves, see our traits through the lens of what our parents, neighbors. No, that's not you at all. People have stuck all sorts of labels on you, and you're convinced you understand yourself perfectly. But that's a misconception. You really do need to spend a long time, I'll stress this again, resisting the urge to jump to hasty conclusions. You need to explore yourself over an extended period. The deeper you dive into your inner world, the more effective your inner changes will be. And if you don't do this, you'll run into serious difficulties, even, let me emphasize, when you see a psychotherapist. Even when you do a ton of reading, watch countless films, attend different educational programs, listen to talks, and so on, it still doesn't yield results. Because we lack the ability to look within with our own unclouded perception. We mostly see ourselves through the lens of other people's views and definitions. This is crucial. At some point, it's essential to grasp this, to arrive at that understanding, and to develop this self-knowledge. So now let's discuss the questions that often come up on this topic. I'm often asked how the transitions between stages of personal development are experienced. Here's a popular question that helps unpack it. I've been watching myself, and I notice that every move to a new level feels like a partial dive into depression, into deep awareness. It always turns into a period where I'm in a deep, low-grade depression, sometimes full-on depression, and it feels like clinical depression. Is that a normal stage? a usual way awareness unfolds, just building the skill of acceptance whatever state you're in? Or is it something that needs separate work? And is it even normal that with each transition, in maturity, in spirituality, in terms of awareness, every time I say goodbye to some piece of my own childishness in one area of life or overall, I end up sinking into a depressive state of varying intensity? Great question. Let's recall what was said at the very beginning. Pain is our ally. If you drop into that pain, yes, it hurts. Depression hurts. Crisis hurts. What do you actually do then? First and foremost, don't bolt headlong. In this regard, I'm someone who's strongly against antidepressants and other attempts to numb the pain. I'm against it, but that doesn't mean I'm dogmatic about it. No, sometimes if a doctor says it's important and necessary, of course. Still, I'm convinced a crisis has to be gone through, lived through. For some people it takes a long time, a year, 2, 3. It can really take a while. I'm thinking of my own crises that I've had to live through. In that regard, I'm probably second to none. Sometimes it's rough. Some things are excruciating to go through. You suffer for a long time, and it seems like you'll never see the light at the end of the tunnel, like there's no end in sight. But sometimes, 2 or 3 years later, you realize something in you simply ripened. You agonized, you suffered, life slapped you around, but you came out stronger. And today, when someone or something tries to get to you, first, you easily sidestep a needless hit. Second, you don't let yourself be broken, even by life's mishaps. You don't even notice them anymore. Those so-called difficulties. Hello everyone, and a warm welcome to my colleagues. They say communication works better when people can see each other. So, about the idea that we see ourselves through other people's eyes. I'm often asked, how do you develop your own inner perspective? This is a skill that takes years to build, and let me say up front, without practice, it almost never develops on its own. I know very few people who were fortunate enough to gain wisdom in their youth. There are those who, without any special training or ongoing inner work, manage to find themselves quite early. They're rare, but they do exist, and I always admire people who can really hear themselves. Most people don't have this skill, though. That has a lot to do with how we're raised. I'll come back to this when we talk about resilience in the second part of our session. For now, let's look at 3 key steps you need to master to learn to look within. First, aim to shift your locus of control, your inner awareness and observation, down into your belly. This is crucial. I know many business people and entrepreneurs I closely interact with or have interacted with who, in conversation, seldom maintain eye contact. With every question, they seem to turn inward, look inside, and search for something. That's a skill, and you can train it. By the way, there's a theory that we're all born kinesthetic types. 99% of us are kinesthetic types at birth, and kinesthetic types, by the way, are the most adaptable. These people tune in to their own sensations, even though our whole culture is built around visual perception. Think back to school. Look here, look at me, pay attention to Mum, look at Dad. Do you see the cat? Look, a bird is flying, there goes a girl. We keep hearing, look, watch, pay attention, take a good look. That's how people get reprogrammed into visual learners, and roughly 60 to 70% end up that way. Let me repeat, this isn't some revelation or the ultimate truth. There's a theory like that, not yet backed by solid science, which says we're being retrained. So we need to start the reverse process. Learn to tune into our kinesthetic sense. Check in with yourself every day. What do I want right now? Ice cream? Great. I'm going to get some. It sounds insanely simple, but that's exactly where it all starts. What do I want in this moment? Maybe I feel like whacking him over the head with a cast-iron skillet because he's annoying me. Now ask yourself, is that truly your inner desire? Or did you just flare up? A minute ago you didn't have that urge. Where did this burning impulse come from? Is it really yours? That's the second stage. Learning to ask yourself, is this desire mine or someone else's? At first, you'll get it wrong 9 times out of 10. But if you practice this skill for years, you'll be right about half the time, and that's already great. Gradually, you'll learn to reflect on these urges, especially as you start studying personality dynamics, cognitive processes, and other aspects. It's a mature, complex stage, not accessible to everyone, but over time you'll master it too. The third stage is an attempt to feel at one with the world, to feel yourself as part of it. What am I better suited for? What am I drawn to? What do I feel? Not just my own sensations and inner desires, but my calling in this world. Mature people really feel that connection with the world. You need to develop that connection too. If you cultivate that connection, you reach the highest levels of success. Much more than if you're just asking your... People often ask me what emotions and moods are typical of a psychologically mature state, as opposed to an infantile one. How is a person supposed to feel when they're emotionally healthy? If we're talking about a psychologically mature state, for the average person, all else being equal, the first thing is curiosity. I'm interested is the natural state. I'm curious. Imagine you end up at some boring meeting. It's hard for you, and it's hard for most people there. But don't forget that most people spend more time in an infantile state. What does a psychologically mature person do? Observe. If leaving isn't an option, we observe. How does this person respond? How does that one react? It's interesting, right? Let's observe. Say you're at a concert by a performer you're not into. The infantile reaction is, I need to get out of here right now. The mature stance is, since I'm here anyway, I'm curious, I'll observe what's going on. Or you're clashing with someone close to you. The infantile reaction is to yell and demand, I want this, give it to me. I don't want you acting like that. The mature stance is, I observe what's happening. Why are they demanding this of me? What's going on overall? How did this relationship develop? Why have we reached this crisis? We observe. Observation and curiosity are natural states for a mature adult. Keep yourself there as long as you can. Please, try to stay in it all the time. I've mentioned many times that my North Star is a well-known entrepreneur and investor. I'm constantly studying his biography, reading about him and so on. I've never met him in person, but I have talked to people who worked with him. 3 people in my life have shared stories of their personal conversations with him and told me what it was like. And people notice that such a person is always in observer mode, never losing that ability. Such a person listens attentively wherever they are and says very little. Many used to mistake them for a simpleton because they hardly ever opened their mouth and assumed they weren't very bright. But in reality, that's a sign of genuine maturity, to keep quiet on purpose while still seeing, observing, and analyzing. That's the first trait. The second hallmark of a mature person is an inner state of celebration and joy. I don't mean some forced cheerfulness, but there's still a certain lightness. It's the ability to genuinely laugh at a good joke, to notice something curious or amusing and enjoy it. That's natural. Let me give you an example I often use. Think of the classic animated film Treasure Island. There's a character in it, Dr. Livesey. Dr. Livesey is the most psychologically healthy character in the whole story, the only truly well-adjusted and level-headed one. If you're into self-development and have time for these kinds of observations, I recommend studying this character. Dr. Livesey is a great example. Watch how he carries himself. He's a genuine role model. People often ask me, how does a mature person deal with fear? You've said we should consciously go into the pain, so what do we do with fear? Should we go into it as well? And how does that tie into psychological maturity? I love questions that jump ahead. We're just getting to this topic. I've prepared some material on dealing with fear, so let's discuss it now. People often ask me about the difference between masochism and a healthy way of dealing with life's challenges. When masochism is at play, a person constantly seeks painful experiences and feels uneasy in a calm, natural state. Simply put, they feel bad when, objectively, everything is fine. In everyday situations, they feel uncomfortable. Something irritates or bothers them. They feel a need either to cause trouble for someone or to get into trouble themselves. Such a person eagerly waits for a chance to feel physical or emotional pain by various means. They feel ill at ease in normal conditions. Meanwhile, a psychologically healthy person feels comfortable in ordinary circumstances. And if they find themselves in an unpleasant situation, they take it in stride and think, okay, I'll get through this. You can find something useful even in a tough experience. Once the unpleasant situation is over, the person is grateful for the experience and tries to avoid similar circumstances in the future if they bring no benefit. The healthy person doesn't seek out suffering on purpose, but if it happens, they don't panic. This doesn't mean passive resignation to circumstances. Please don't think I'm promoting a self-destructive philosophy. It's the understanding that if something happens, you move through it without swinging to extremes and without asking, why me, or what did I do to deserve this? There's no point drowning in intense emotions that lead to frustration, anger, and a desire for revenge. That's an immature stance that has never led to positive results.